All right, so we're going to move now into talking about sugar. And Tyler, we've done this a few times over the years, but it is one of the things that's so hard for people to kind of eliminate. And we know it's really bad for us. The World Health Organization's telling us that now. We take too much. Everything's got sugar in it. So you're going to sort of talk over sugar and then sort of what we can maybe do to try to help ourselves, but it really comes down to willpower.
Yeah, a lot of it is willpower. There are a few interesting tricks which we'll go through. But yeah, you're right. A lot of it is, they say it's not addictive, but who are we kidding?
Well,
Totally.
they're now studying and saying that it's as addictive as something like cocaine.
Yeah, there's so much industry pushback, but you're right. Like, sugar has a direct button push on the reward centers of our brain. And I remember, it's been a while since we've done it, but Shelly and I used to do weight management programs, and one of the first things we did the first week was sort of try to kick the sugar habits. And I remember our clients, they would go through headaches. They'd be depressed. They'd be grouchy. They'd
I believe it.
All this withdrawal from having sugar.
Experience every time I try to quit sugar.
Yeah, so it is an addictive substance.
It is, and then what I find too is that as soon as if you go back to it, if you've been really addicted to it, you're going to eat a dozen donuts, right? Which is crazy. So it is really hard, but there are some things that we can take a look at that are somewhat of sugar substitutes that are a little bit better for us, but still give us that sweetness.
They'll give you the sweetness, but without hitting that same reward center. So in some senses, they aren't as satisfying as actual sugar is from a emotional standpoint. But from a taste bud standpoint, they can do the trick. One of my favorite things I constantly recommend is something called xylitol. It has a funny name. A lot of people think when they hear the word xylitol, it sounds so chemical. How could it be natural?
Yeah,
right?
It's too bad because it is kind of a bad name
it's a terrible name,
but it's great.
It's not a company name. Xylitol is basically a sugar alcohol derived from xylose, which is a 5-carbon sugar. So it is naturally occurring, and because it's sugar alcohol, it's partially fermented, which gives it a much sweeter taste. The advantage of it is that it tastes almost exactly like sugar. You use it exactly like sugar.
Yeah,
so if you put
amazing.
a teaspoon in your coffee, you put a teaspoon of this in your coffee as well. But it absorbs extremely poorly. So you think of it almost like fiber. Fiber is counted as calories from an actual label sense, but you don't count it as calories because your body doesn't absorb it. Same occurs with the xylitol. The majority of the xylitol that goes into your system goes right out your body. So it doesn't count as calories. Now, the only downside of it going right out your body is that if you take too much of it, there was a carb craze a decade ago when Atkins was really popular.
Right.
And there was a whole pile of Atkins food, and it all contains xylitol and mannitol, which is related to it. And people were like, it's really good, but I have to go to the washroom constantly when I'm eating it. And you just have to be careful with the xylitol.
And again, you're supposed to be cutting down sugar overall. So if you replace it with something like xylitol, you don't want to go overboard anyway. And then what about something like stevia?
So stevia is something that stevia contains 0 calories. It's, to my knowledge, the only 0-calorie natural sweetener.
And it's a plant as well.
It's plant-based. I've actually had the pleasure of eating the stevia leaf before, and it tastes like really sweet apples. Just a tiny little bite of the leaf is really sweet apples. So the thing with stevia, it's great in the sense that it's 0 calories. If you're diabetic, it won't affect your blood sugar or whatsoever. Downside is that it has a very particular taste.
It does.
You've had it before.
Yeah.
It seems to be very individual. Some people, they're totally fine with it. Me, personally, I can't stand it. Maybe it's just a decade of eating it and everything that I consume in the health food industry. But I have an aversion to stevia.
Yeah.
But some people are totally okay with it, and I do find that the brand and the make and the extraction process makes a big difference.
I was going to say, people can
Some
try
are better
different
than
ones.
others.
Exactly. Some are way better than others.
Yeah.
So.
And you can also find things like they're using xylitol on things like gum as well, which has become very popular.
Yeah, it is really good. What is that?
This is moving on to the artificial sweeteners.
Oh, right, yes.
So these are the natural.
I've forgotten about sugar twin.
So other than the sugar alcohol and other than stevia, which are pretty much your two sort of natural-based 0 to very low-calorie sugar alternatives, you're dealing with artificial sweeteners, which I'm not a huge fan of. If I had to pick one, if someone forced me to choose the best one, I'd probably pick sucralose or Splenda, as they also call it.
Right.
Because it is the closest to sugar. It has this best safety profile. A lot of the other ones, like cyclamate, which is this, sodium cyclamate, or aspartame, or...
They're chemicals, aren't
They're
they?
chemicals, which I don't like out of, I guess, principle.
Yeah.
But also they've had a really rocky history of approval and safety, where they're approved and then they're not approved, and then they take
I just say,
it's just,
if it's not natural, we shouldn't be putting it in our body, right? I mean, really, so.
The only advantage to something like this is that if you have, I guess it's the lesser of the two evils. If you have type 2 diabetes and you must have sweetness in some form, and fruit's not going to cut it when I'm jumping ahead of myself, it's better than having your blood sugar skyrocket.
Right.
I
But you could
suppose.
use stevia.
You could use something natural like stevia or xylitol.
Because like this, a lot of those have aftertaste too. So if you
Yes.
have aftertaste,
Yeah.
try
Might
stevia.
as well
Although
try
it's a lot more
stevia.
money, and I understand that it is more expensive for people. But then just cut it down. Use way less of it.
Exactly.
So let's get into some of the natural options: honey, and of course maple syrup, and then the palm sugars.
Yeah,
and stuff.
and there's agave syrups, and there's all kinds of different natural ones. So these ones all have sweetness, and sometimes very intense sweetness, like in the case of like agave syrup, or some honeys are very intensely sweet. The advantage of the natural sweeteners is that they still have other health benefits. They still impart unique flavors. They have some other health benefits in some cases, like they'll contain their own. Like honey has a lot of other nutrients in it that are beneficial. The downside is that they are slightly better than sugar in terms of how they affect your blood sugar, but not by much. So if you still have diabetes, if you're still trying to avoid sugars or avoid the calories, it's going the wrong way.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you still have to keep that in mind and understand that you're still bringing sugar into your body if you're trying to sort of eliminate. And then our natural sources of sugar, which is in our fruit.
That's probably what you expected me to to endorse fully, and that's what I do. There's a saying that fruit is nature's candy, which couldn't be further from the truth. The advantage of fruit in its natural form, not in like extracted syrups or things like palm sugars and stuff like that, is that you have fiber, you have very low glycemic index. So the sugar that is there, despite tasting very sweet, really affects our blood sugar very little. So if you have diabetes, or if you're trying to prevent diabetes, that is your way to go. There's lots of things you can do with it. Like when we have when our family has pancakes, for instance, we'll have first of all, we put protein in our pancakes, protein powder in our pancakes.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, just to give it some more nutritional rounded balance. But then we'll throw fresh fruit on top of it and use a little bit of maple syrup. I have this thing.
I'm going to hold. I just put up a website here how to stop eating sugar. There were some good tips, a lot of things that you talk about. So it's just a great place for people to go to. So I wanted to mention that. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's hard, right? At the end of the day, it's really hard to cut sugar out of your diet if it's something that you've consumed for a long period of time.
It might require some baby steps, like maybe cold turkey is too much. Maybe you want to sort of peter it out, and one less sugary food a day, or replace it with xylitol. Like start with. I would probably start with these personally. Huge fan of xylitol. That's what I would start with, and try to make a little bit of use. But go in moderation. I know some people, they've heard that maple syrup is better than sugar, which it is. But then I'll watch them. I'm a people watcher.
Yeah, and then
breakfast time,
you're
and they'll use a whole thing, and then like my jaw falls open. I'm like, you just use the whole thing of maple syrup.
It's crazy. And then if you are using maple syrup, make sure it's pure.
Yes.
Tyler, thanks so much. Always great information. Again, we could talk every single time you come in about sugar, because I think it's one of the things people find so hard to get rid of. Full Circle Healthcare. You can check them out at their new location on Nebo Road. It's in the second floor of the medical center there. You can check them out on Twitter, and also fullcirclehealthcare.ca for more information.